Hello, and thanks for tuning in to M Compass Media. I'm your host, Finbar Markey. Over the week, leader of the Rural Independent grouping in the Dáil, Mattie McGrath, put some very serious questions in the topical questions section in the Dáil last week, hoping that those questions might be answered by the Minister for Children. Instead, the questions were answered by Minister for State Colin Burke from Fine Gael. In the questions that Mattie laid out, there was a listing of continuous horrific failings on the part of Tusla with regards to child protection. Irrespective of all of those failings, the minister seemed to want to focus purely on the missing children and trying to minimise that issue. I'm joined today by Anna Kavanagh, who is the co-founder and the facilitator of the Alliance of Birth Mothers Seeking Justice. She's also a co-founder of M Compass Media itself. And I'm joined by the wonderful Mattie McGrath, who is one of the only TDs in Dáil Éireann that's willing to challenge the monolith that is Tusla. Thanks both of you for joining me this evening.
Delighted.
Guys, I'm going to start off by showing a couple of clips from the questions that Mattie McGrath was asking, who he hoped would be the Minister for Children, but it turned out to be Colin Burke. The Minister seems to have a set reply that was given to him, that he didn't seem to understand what the content of the reply was. We'll have a look at these two clips first of all. The first one is looking at the destruction of documents by Minister O'Gorman, and the second video is where Mattie McGrath is asking about the 40 missing children under Tusla's care currently.
Last September, Minister O'Gorman admitted that his department deleted 3 out of 4 reports pertaining to children taken into care by Tusla, which was sent to him in May 2023 by the now retired Judge Dermot Sims, while he was still on the bench. Judge Sims told the Minister about this, and I quote him: "Utmost concern for the immediate predicament and welfare of children who are in the care of the state." This week, the final report from the Child Law Project has been reporting since 2013 on Tusla cases in family courts was published. It contains 70 reports about children taken by Tusla into state care before the courts. It is a horrific litany of detailing children in care, not assigned a social worker, children sexually abused in foster care, children trafficked across the country for sex by predatory males, and the top judges have said in despair at the lack of place of social workers. Responding to the report, the Ombudsman, Dr. Brian Muldoon, expressed his despair at the situation facing children taken into care by Tusla. In his statement, he said, "It is understood that judges now have continuously and repeatedly held to hold Tusla to account for their failings in their statutory duty to children. It is not only judges that are worried. I have heard from social workers, social care workers and guardians and items about the real fears of the welfare of these children."
Before we move on to the second video, which looks at the actual missing children itself, I'll turn to Mattie first. Mattie, there's such a litany of failings there mentioned, often not necessarily being revealed or the source of that coming from mothers themselves, but coming from judges, coming from representative organisations, the Children's Ombudsman. Just in terms of the impact of all of this on your constituents who have to engage with Tusla, what kind of impact do you think, and what kind of trust do you think your constituents can have in Tusla when we have this litany of disasters?
No trust whatsoever, Finbar, is what I would say at this point in time. Thankfully, some judges now have spoken up quite strongly. I know Deputy Ducklin has tried to raise this in Cameroon numerous times in the Dáil on behalf of the birth mothers and the cabinet, but he has, had limited success. Thankfully, got the topical issue, but I mean, they wheel out a Minister of State from a different department, so Minister O'Gorman is hiding, and we place this in the context of him saying, and he has said it, that the goings on at Tusla and the happenings at Tusla have never cost him a night's sleep. So that's a very, very serious statement for him to make in light of all what's happening out there, and what we know what's happening out there, the trauma and anguish. When you have a minister that's so devoid of responsibility and so abjectly, like turning a closed and blind eye to what's going on in Tusla. It's a shocking, serious situation for any democracy.
And Anna Kavanagh of the Alliance of Birth Mothers Seeking Justice, what's your response? I know that you guys, and I'm a part of that organisation myself, I know that you guys are heavily involved in revealing much of this. But when you hear it listed off like that in the houses of the Oireachtas, in our parliament, in our government buildings themselves, what's your response to that? And I know you have little faith in Tusla as it is. How do you think this impacts the trust that mothers and families can have in Tusla around the country?
Well, to begin with, I would like to pay huge tribute to Deputy Mattie McGrath, who, along with Bernard Durkin, Deputy Bernard Durkin from Fine Gael and from the Aontú leader, Peadar Tobin, have been raising issues pertaining to Tusla in the Dáil over many years. And, you know, it's very telling that only 3 deputies out of the entire cohort of TDs are prepared to put their head above the parapet and take on Tusla on the floor of the Dáil. Now, I do think that there is a sea change. Mattie mentioned there about judges now starting to speak out about the dysfunction in Tusla. But what's very heartening is that the media and major commentators in the media are now speaking out. For example, Justine McCarthy, who is an award-winning columnist with the Irish Times, in her opinion piece last week in the Irish Times, spoke about the dysfunction in Tusla and the failures to protect children that are in care. And I thought it was very interesting that she said that there have been so many reports published by the Child's Law Project, by the Children's Ombudsman, and by HICWA, and it seems to be to no avail. And this comes at a huge amount of money. And she just posed the question, would we not be better off spending the money on protecting children instead of propping up organisations that are producing reports that are being ignored? And yesterday, on Saturday, Mick Clifford, in his opinion piece in the Irish Examiner, explored some of the issues raised by the Child's Law Project report that was published earlier this week. And he finished off by saying that there's no will on the part of the political parties to take on the failure of to protect children in state care. And the reason for this is that there's no public appetite for it, that there's no pressure being put on politicians to protect children in state care. So I suppose, you know, we've been campaigning in the Alliance of Birth Mothers, campaigning for justice since 2019. It has been an uphill struggle. But I do think that the tide is starting to turn. The pressure is starting to mount, coming from both the media and from statutory organisations like the Child's Law Project, which I mentioned already. They published a series of 70 reports on children in state care that came before the courts in recent months. And really, it is a very, very shocking litany of state failures to protect children. And speaking out in response to that report, the Ombudsman for Children made reference to the fact that we're approaching the 15th anniversary of the Ryan report on state abuse of children. And, you know, we seem to be no further on. Yeah. And I suppose what I would say is that the current abuse of children in state care is going to be the subject of tribunals in years to come. And, you know, I suppose picking up on what Mick Clifford was saying about no will on the part of politicians and the political parties to take on the abuse of children in state care, the Alliance of Birth Mothers Campaigning for Justice a week ago actually wrote to the leaders of all of the political parties, Micheál Martin, Simon Harris, Mary Lou McDonald, Holly Cairns, Ivana Bacik. And we had previously written to Roderick O'Gorman when he was Minister for Children, seeking a meeting with them. And it's hard to believe that apart from the automated responses that come out, you know, when you send an email, we actually got no response from any one of the party leaders. And I quietly behind the scenes approached politicians in all of these political parties that I know personally, and they assured me that they would go to the party leader and advocate on our behalf to get them to meet with us. But not alone did we not get a meeting, we didn't even get a response as of yet, and a week has lapsed. Okay. So we just have to keep fighting.
So there are cracks appearing, but in reality, in terms of the trust and the faith that the population and the people of the country can have in Tusla, it seems to be eroding with each crack, and maybe that is a part of the process. Mattie McGrath, based on the litany of failures, and they're more than failures, because some of these things sound almost criminal, do the people of the country, do they have a good reason to be terrified by the organisation that is Tusla? When you look at the manipulation, the pathological behaviour, when you look at what they did to Garda Maris McCabe, when you look at all these things put together, should we be terrified? And should mothers and fathers and parents be terrified of Tusla the way it is at the moment?
We certainly should, Finbar, especially, you know, you mentioned Maris McCabe and mentioned other issues. When we look at poor Lucia Farrell in the door last week, seeking justice for, you know, the horrible killing of her son, you know, so many years later. And when you look at litany of, I mentioned them in my own contribution, like Fallon Island, Malaya, the Whitty Island disaster, the Dublin Monaghan bombs, you know, the Oma bombs. There are numerous, you know, John Doherty, Dowra affair. There's numerous miscarriages of justice, grievous miscarriages of justice, where the truth has been buried, and the Irish people have been lied to and been stopped in every way in accessing the truth, and cover up after cover up after cover up of murder, you know, in many cases. So people have a right to be feared, but I don't know, the cracks appearing, but, you know, we see Helen McEntee brave-faced, settled it all for a 2-hour debate, and just stony-faced us all. And Micheál Martin has a lot to answer for. He was going to turn the house upside down when he got into power for Lucia Farrell. And the other case, go back to the Gaegan family in Limerick, where animals were poisoned, and they were seriously, grievously ill themselves by pollution from an adjoining factory, and inquiries and blood samples going lost. The corruption is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, so people do have a right to be terrified. We're going to look at another video now from that question that you asked. It turned out to be Minister for State Colin Burke last week about Tusla. And this is where you were asking about the missing children. And from there, we'll actually look at Colin Burke's response, which I personally think minimises the issue quite a bit. But let's just have a quick look at this video.
Last week, we learned from a reply to a parliamentary question put by Deputy Tobin that 40 children in Tusla took into state care are currently missing. It is understood that 22 of those missing are separated children seeking international protection and unaccompanied minors. And 29th February, Deputy Tobin raised in this House for the second time with Minister O'Gorman the case of a 14-year-old girl who went missing within an hour of being placed in by Tusla in state care, only to be found a year later locked in a brothel. 40 children missing from the state care, and there's no outcry. Just as there was no outcry or indeed government outrage in June 2023 in response to a report from University College Dublin School of Social Policy revealing that children taken into state care by Tusla are going missing and are being targeted and sexually exploited by coordinated gangs of predatory men.
And to find that some of them possibly are being trafficked into the sex industry, which is something else that you mentioned, Mattie, is absolutely shocking. But let's hear the response of the Minister to those concerns about missing children, because it is quite shocking. And if it does beg the question, if the state has been given the responsibility to look after the children that are in care, and that this is the kind of response, it sounds to me like they're very bad parents. Let's have a listen to this.
Tusla and An Garda Síochána work together collaboratively on children missing in care cases through the An Garda Síochána Tusla joint working protocol on missing children. Most of the children and young people reported missing return to their placement after a brief period of time and remain in a safe and caring environment. It is important to note that where a child is absent from their residential care placement for more than 15 minutes, they may be reported as missing from care under the joint protocol. This could be for a range of reasons, such as missing their curfew or not returning to their placement at an agreed time. This joint protocol is being reviewed and updated by Tusla and An Garda Síochána. Once An Garda Síochána are notified that a child is deemed missing, and once a child has been reported absent, the Gardaí have primary responsibility for investigating the child's whereabouts, while the Gardaí have primary responsibility for investigating once a child is reported missing. Tusla staff maintain regular contact with the Gardaí throughout the investigation and pass on all relevant information to assist in the safe return of the child. Tusla also prepares an absence management plan for each child in care. The plan is a tool to manage the risk in the event of a child go missing. The Garda National Missing Persons Unit has oversight over Garda investigation on the ongoing attempts to locate the child, including liaison with Interpol if there is concern that the child has left the jurisdiction.
The Minister seems to be saying there, or inferring, that a lot of these missing children are in some way, they've just disappeared. They're not home within 15 minutes. And that's why we have this number of missing children. But on the other hand, when you listen to the wider response from the Minister, it's quite clear that these missing 40 children have been missing for a lot more than 15 minutes. Mattie, what do you think of that reply from Minister for State Colin Burke? Yeah, I personally thought it was minimising the problem. What do you think? Is that reflective of good parents, good parenting skills on the part of the state?
It's shocking. I mean, again, it's cavalier on behalf of the Department of Children. The fact that Minister O'Gorman wouldn't come in and answer the question himself, which he's duty bound to, when a topical issue, you have the right to expect, and sometimes, you can refuse to take it. But I know I could refuse several times. He wouldn't take it. He's abdicating responsibility. A carefully, quite bland, pre-prepared script was read out there to kind of a scattergun approach. Blame Gardaí, say it's 15 minutes, all over the place. The fact of the matter is, Finbar, and Anna knows as well, if I'm not a fan of myself, but my brother is, and if he is missing a tag, and don't take an offence to me comparing children with animals, I'm not, but I'm talking about the regime is so strict with traceability of food and animals that if one animal loses a tag and missing or hasn't a tag, there's severe penalties and severe alarm bells, and that farmer can't trade, and everything is checked robustly. And I think the children are in care, children, human beings, and state care, one ending up in a brothel after an hour and found a year later. The university report that was done, quite a professional report. There was no everybody jumping up and down. I can't believe it. People like the leader of the Labour Party and the Labour or Social Democrats wouldn't be concerned about this, and others, but they are supposed to be in opposition. And Deputy MacDonald, it's just beggars belief that this kind of a cavalier answer could be dished out and read out by Minister of State Burke, and kind of business as usual, nothing to see here, most of them return in 15 minutes. We're talking about young, vulnerable people, some mother's child, that mother, was supposed to be told that the child was taken away from the mother or the parents because they weren't being cared for properly. And the state could have such a low bar and such a shocking standard, and no accountability whatsoever, and nobody held to account. And it's a kind of warehousing and privatisation of children in care. It disgusts me. I have 10 grandchildren, and one new grandchild came into our family at 20 to 1 on Thursday night, little baby Ashling. And, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to have a new baby born. I think that the baby will be born today, and they may end up in the hands, as I said, of these predatory adults, men, and pretty organised groups of men, and the state are blasé about it. Anna knows, and you know, Finn, but I know that the Garda Síochána are extremely understaffed, under-resourced, and are only scratching at the surface here and what's going on. There's no resources proper going in here to ensure that the children taken into care are safer in care. And they are. The best place that we all know for a child is their mother's arms or the family hub. But these are often taken. We saw Judge O'Brien, how, the in-camera rule, how ex-party cases are taken without even telling the mother. It's a shocking situation, and it's an appalling vista as far as I'm concerned. And I intend to keep raising it, and I thank Anna and the Beth Mothers and yourself, Pinber, for your support and for your highlighting these issues and bringing them through the politicians.
Of course. Anna, according to the minister, this is all a recording issue mainly, it's this 15-minute rule. That's why these kids have been recorded as missing. There's nothing to be concerned about. Another reason might be that these kids are non-nationals, or at least some of them are. That might be a reason why they're missing. The kids might be the problem themselves, but the state have nothing to answer for, according to the minister, and there's nothing to be worried about. Do you agree?
Well, the statement read out by Junior Minister Burke emanated in the Department of Children, presided over by Minister Roderick O'Gorman. And just referring back to what Mattie said earlier about the minister saying he had no concern about Tusla, that actually is from the 10th anniversary of the founding of Tusla. They had a big celebration in Dublin Castle back on the 6th of February. And Jack Power, reporting in the Irish Times on the anniversary celebration, said that Minister Gorman, in his address at the celebration, said that Tusla never gave him or the government a moment of concern. Now, what really concerns me is that he was given an exclusive interview platform in the Irish Times yesterday, where he played the gay card and said that as a minister, he has been the subject of homophobic attacks because he's a gay man. And I would dispute that. I would say that Irish people are very, very liberal. We voted to decriminalise homosexuality, but he's playing this gay card. People are not concerned whether he's gay or straight, but the people of Ireland are very, very concerned that he sees no difficulty with Tusla, that he didn't respond to the report from UCD that children were being trafficked by predatory males into the sex trade. His response to Judge Sims' reports was to have 3 of the 4 reports shredded. That's why people are so concerned. And the statement that was wheeled out by his department and delivered by Minister Burke the other day in response to Deputy McGrath is just more of the same. Now, it also, this week, Tusla published its annual report for 2023. And the only mainstream media outlet, print outlet, to report on that was the Irish Examiner. So yesterday there was a report on the front page, which clearly was the press release that emanated from Tusla itself. And it gave a whole load of facts and figures. And among the facts and figures was the fact that there were 92,000 referrals to Tusla in 2023. Now, I would dispute those referrals because we're getting a lot of reports in the Alliance of Birth Mothers about coming from mothers whom there was malicious reports made against them. So if you want to destroy somebody, all you have to do is report them to Tusla, as happened in the case of Maurice McCabe when he was whistleblowing on the Garda penalty points. So we're getting a lot of reports from mothers who are victims of malicious reports. Like in one case, a parent who complained about the charter for discipline in a school. and wrote to the school principal. That resulted in a malicious report being made about that parent to Tusla. You know, so
again, that
also
opens up
just to mention, Finbar, while I'm on my train of thought, just to mention, Mattie there made reference to Judge O'Brien, and Judge Gerard O'Brien was jailed recently for sexually assaulting a number of boys. One of them, I think, was underage, and also a rape, and he was given a jail sentence for it. And we are aware of one mother who ended up before Judge O'Brien in the Circuit Court. She believes her children were taken unlawfully and handed over to Tusla in the District Court in an ex parte hearing, which she was not present at. And she appealed that to the Circuit Court, and she came before Judge O'Brien. He refused to allow for the appeal, and he also refused to give an order to release the DAR from the District Court to her. So, you know, this begs the question, should there be an independent inquiry into the cases that have come before Judge O'Brien, the family law cases that have come before him? And finally, the last point I'd like to make is that there has been huge media talk about what has happened to women in the criminal courts. You know, there was just so much media coverage on Natasha O'Brien, and she got a standing ovation in the Dáil, and so on and so forth. But all of that abuse of women in the criminal courts is happening in plain sight. But in the case of mothers in the family court, it's bound by the in-camera rule. And those mothers cannot speak out about how they're being abused. In the case of one mother that I'm familiar with, she tried to counter the lies that were being told about her by Tusla officials in the family court. And the response of the judge was to have the guards remove her from the court and bring her down to the cell in the basement of the court, where she was watched over by a male guard. And when she asked to go to the toilet, he handed her a bucket. And she was left there for several hours. And then when the court was over that evening, she was brought back up then into the body of the court, a very broken woman, and brought before the court and coerced and bullied into the custody of her child, who was being sexually abused, was given to the abuser. So this is the type of thing that's going on in the family courts. And Deputy Bernard Durkin has been raising this issue in the Dáil now more than 30 times since September 2022. And in the beginning, he was getting no hearing whatsoever in the issue. Now they're giving him a little bit more of a hearing. The in-camera rule must go in the family court. The in-camera rule has gone now in most of the courts in the UK, in England and Wales. So the in-camera rule must go in the family courts to open up the courts to journalists, so that there can be some insight into the abuse of mothers in children in those courts.
Okay. These are all of the issues that Mattie was touching upon in his questions to Minister of State Colin Burke and really to the Department of Children. And Mattie did not get a response to. The minister specifically focused in on the missing children and tried to minimize that as much as possible. We have another video here, which I think is the shortest video, but it's most reflective of the laissez-faire, off-the-cuff attitude of this state to looking after children and searching for missing children in care. It's when the minister actually says that 10 of the missing children they've had a phone call with. Their social workers have had a phone call with, and so they're quite satisfied now that those children are safe because of that phone call. Let's have a listen to this. I think it's absolutely shocking. If a parent had this attitude, I think their child would be taken off them.
Can I just respond, Deputy? In relation to 33 children missing, the whereabouts are unknown in relation to the 33, but 10 of them have actually been in contact. So 10 out of the 33 have been in contact, but the whereabouts are still not known. So just to give it into perspective,
Alan Burke, again, minimizing things, saying that imagine your child ran away and you got a phone call from them a month later to say that, oh, I'm safe, but not saying where they are. Would that end your concerns, Mattie, about your child? And do you think that's the attitude that the state should have?
No, indeed, anything but. And remember, that's only 10. A quarter of the 40 that are missing that we know of. There are probably dozens and dozens more. From the context I'm getting, there definitely are more. So just got to get a phone call from a quarter, from somebody gets a phone call, not the parents, from 10 of the 40. I mean, we're supposed to be really sure. What about the other 30? And then trying to say there may be, children that are separated from their parents who arrived here looking for protection. The pattern of children is out of control. It's not fit for purpose. Private agencies, quasi-private agencies like Tusla, but then there's private agencies as well, are literally, making millions out of this here, and there's no traceability. And the fact that there doesn't seem to be any hue or cry or kind of worry. Tusla are an organisation totally unfit for their role. When they were set up 10 years ago, Anna said we're celebrating that, it was just a corner of it, and many of them were disgruntled employees in the HSE. They were hived off out into a new agency, and their whole very foundation and formation was very questionable. So I have had appalling evidence put to me by families of how Tusla officials, social folks have behaved in family homes, the way they spoke to people, the contempt that they have for the parents, and the power that they have. And I have for years, superintendents tell me, different superintendents for a decade now, really, certainly for 5 or 6 or 7 years, that, Tuesday are dealing with a case. I could be dealing with a case there, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And Friday at 3 o'clock, they'll ring the guards and tell the guards they're your problem now. You look after them. They want their weekend off. So, this is not a normal 9-to-5 job. To think that children are missing, it should be, anybody shouldn't sleep for a second without following and pursuing. But I don't know. I'm very, very worried about Minister Rovama trying to play, a sexuality card here. It's nothing got to do with it. But the worry is the fact is that him and his predecessor, Minister Sapone, have both oversaw this. It's hard to believe that a minister could be so callous. And I use that word now quite respectfully. Over 40 children been missing. This is an appalling vista, as I said, and we cannot be allowed to go on. And I support the Met Mothers and I salute them. And it behoved me and others to try and bring this to the fore and keep raising it. If you woke up from a dream and was told this, or saw it in a film, you'd be kind of shake yourself. But I think that this is real life in Ireland in 2024. It's a shocking situation.
Anna Kavanagh of the Alliance of Birth Mothers Seeking Justice, you have a lot of communications with mothers who have children for one reason or another in care, most often unjustly, or where there's no need for it at all. Do you think that if one of their children in care, one of those mothers, if their child disappeared, there was no contact for maybe a month, 2 months, and they got a phone call to say they were okay, but didn't say where they were or anything else, do you think most of your mothers that'll contact you would just accept that, or would they be even more concerned?
When we appeared before the Dáil Petition Committee on the 13th of June, I raised the issue of one mother that I interviewed for the Justice for Birth Mothers podcast series, and her child went missing. She wasn't notified, and her child actually ended up very far away from the foster home. There was no bus there, and when she tried to raise this in court, she was shut down. And part of the problem of the children missing in care is that Tusla is now using the services of private residential companies. It's a growing business. So these private companies that are run for profit are not subject to any kind of inspections. And in fact, Jack Power, in a major expose in the Irish Times at the beginning of the year, highlighted how one of these companies, iCare, allegedly the owner of that company produced false Garda vetting reports and false staff references. And that's now a subject of a Garda investigation. So the tied in with the children missing from care is the fact that there is a growing trend now to farm children out to private for-profit companies that are not subject to any inspections. And in fact, if you look at the top 10 recipients of funding from Tusla in the private residential sector, you will see that the vast majority of these people that are running these companies are actually not Irish people, and some of them are actually registered outside of Ireland. So it's really, really alarming. Tusla is now funded to the tune of €1.1 billion in 2023. And as I said, their annual report for 2023 was published during the week. And buried in that report, we can see that there was over €1 million of an overpayment to its staff. There was, I think it's 4 million of goods that they didn't tender for properly, and that the State Claims Agency at the end of 2023 estimates that the exposure to claims, compensation claims arising from Tusla is in the tens of millions at this stage. So it's all very worrying. And what really angers me that when Kate Duggan, who is the Tusla CEO, is interviewed in mainstream media on either radio or television, they always try to frame the cause of the problem around a lack of funding. It is not around a lack of funding. It's around the culture in Tusla that holds nobody accountable for wrongdoing, where you have, as Mattie said, people who are not competent, that were farmed out from other departments. There were kind of misfits in other departments, and they were kind of moved over then to Tusla when it was founded. And there's absolutely no accountability whatsoever. When we were before the petition committee, and our petition is that at the minute, HICWA can inspect Tusla, but when they find that Tusla is not complying with its statutory requirements, they have no power whatsoever to sanction Tusla. So our petition is to bring in legislation to give HICWA the power to sanction Tusla when it's found to be non-compliant with its statutory obligations. So I think, there's an awful lot in what we've been saying to unpack. We've bamboozled people with an awful lot of information. And, I think, maybe it's a topic that we should come back to again, perhaps when the Dáil reconvenes in September. And I just want to mention now that on September the 18th, there is a march being organised in Dublin. Enough is Enough. Enough is Enough is a UK registered NGO, and they have been very successful in organising marches in the UK. And now they are organising a march in Dublin with the help of a number of us. And it's for all people who feel that we have enough of state abuse, whether it be by the HSE, Tusla, whether it be in the courts or whatever. So we're calling on all people to come out to Dublin on September the 18th. And there is a website, Enough is Enough, and the details of it will be going up on the Alliance of Birth Mothers page, and indeed on the Compass Media page very soon. Okay. So I think I have said enough at this stage, Finbar.
Okay, Anna, thanks very much. Again, one of the problematics is that there, just with Tusla alone, there's so much to unpack. It's not just one area, it's right across the board, right across the country when it comes to Tusla and so many more organizations. So we will be coming back to this specific topic. And again, we do regularly look at corruption across the country and within state agencies in particular. We're running out of time, so I'd like to thank Mattie McGrath, leader of the Independent Rurals within Dáil Éireann, and Anna Kavanagh, founder and facilitator for the Alliance of Birth Mothers Seeking Justice. Again, we'd like people to keep tuned into M-Compass Media, because we're one of the only stations or platforms that are consistently looking at the failings of Tusla. By spreading what we are producing about this topic, we are slowly cracking and getting the light out, or getting the light, I should say, into Tusla, with the likes of Mattie McGrath, with the likes of Bernard Durkin, and a few other politicians and activists as well. So we're asking people to not only stay tuned, but to spread this message. You may not like people's politics on other issues. I think everyone will agree that the safety and the security of the children of this country is very important, and that the agency that provides that security needs to be squeaky clean, and it's far from that. Mattie McGrath, Anna Kavanagh, thanks for joining me today.
God bless and enjoy your summer.
Thank you, Finbar.